He's still young. Bright young man, completed his M.Med, MPCHP, did his M.Med, then did a fellowship and a PhD. In fact, he combined his fellowship as well as a PhD at the same time, which I believe is, we would like that to be our model in the School of Medicine. You do your fellowship as well as your PhD at the same time. We hope we shall get there, but Dr. Kayima did it. He went to Case Western, did a lot of catheterization. He's a very, very brilliant cardiologist. But also, just like Dr. Kennedy, he's a brilliant cardiologist, but also a research person. I have the pleasure, I worked with him on 2 grants now. There was one grant, you remember the MEPI one? Now we've worked on another one to the NIH. We hope we shall succeed. So I really am introducing a friend, a colleague, and everything. So Dr. Kayima, you're welcome to present.
Thank you very much, Professor Kayima, for that very kind introduction. And thank you very much everyone who has been able to make it for this presentation of my work that I've done over the last 5 years. The focus of my work was hypertension, or high blood pressure, and we looked at its epidemiology and the influence of HIV infection and genetics. The operational definitions of this work was that we described hypertension as a systolic blood pressure equal or greater than 140 millimeters of mercury, and a diastolic blood pressure of equal or greater than 90 millimeters of mercury, or if the subject was on treatment. And we described control of high blood pressure as the ability to achieve a systolic blood pressure of 140 millimeters of mercury and a diastolic blood pressure of 90 millimeters of mercury if that subject was treated. We described urban areas as areas incorporating the population in a city, a town, or the suburbia, and the rural areas as those areas that are get out of the city and towns, and usually they have low populations and small settlements. By way of background, we know that cardiovascular disease, or diseases of the heart, are the leading cause of death worldwide. In the year 2015, cardiovascular disease caused 18 million deaths, which was a third of all the deaths in the entire world that year. In Africa, cardiovascular disease is the second highest cause of death. But among those aged 30 years and above, cardiovascular disease mortality exceeded that of TB, HIV, and malaria. Now, high blood pressure is a principal risk factor for cardiovascular disease, especially if it's not well controlled. And it translates into very many adverse outcomes: heart failure, stroke, heart attacks, kidney failure, and mainly the poor control of hypertension is the one that drives these complications. And because we are unaware of hypertension as a serious illness, and because it's undiagnosed and the treatment is poor, the levels of hypertension are high, and people get complications and die from them. Now, we described traditional risk factors for hypertension. We know that urbanization, obesity, physical inactivity, harmful alcohol intake are risk factors for high blood pressure. However, some non-traditional risk factors for hypertension have not been well described. For example, we know that HIV is highly prevalent in Africa. Indeed, up to 70% of all the infections, HIV infections in the world, occur in Africa. And this HIV infection has been postulated to be the risk factor for hypertension. We know it does cause cardiovascular disease, but it's linked as a cause of hasn't been legislated. In the Western world, for example, there's work that suggests that before you start treating HIV and after you start treating, the blood pressure in those individuals is high. However, information from Africa does not agree with that. Either the blood pressures of these HIV-infected patients are normal, or they're even lower than those among HIV-infected patients. So there's a bit of a gray area in there. Now, unlike hypertension, unlike HIV, we know that genetics is a risk factor for hypertension. Now, we know that because there's clustering of hypertension risk among families. What usually happens is once you have a family history of hypertension, you're likely to have hypertension. So we've described that, but we don't know exactly what part of the genetics causes this risk to go up. In the Western world, there's been a description of genetic factors that increase the risk of hypertension. Now, we haven't had that description in Africa, and yet we know that hypertension is probably more prevalent in Africa than elsewhere in the world. What has allowed the description of genetic factors in hypertension elsewhere in the world has been the decoding of the human genome, and this happened in 2001. And the most important thing that we got from that decoding was that the scientists figured that if you have two individuals, their DNA is perfectly similar 99.9% of the times. And the differences you have between individuals is only attributed to only 0.01 of the differences in the DNA. Now, that happens because there are these changes in the DNA we call single base pair changes. So, for example, in this DNA strand, there's a change in that position, a GC to an AT. Now, if that change occurs in less than 1% of the population, we call that a mutation. However, if that change occurs in greater than 1% of the population, we call it a single nucleotide polymorphism, and I'll be referring to it as SNP as we go along. Now, these SNPs are responsible for 90% of the variation in human genome. The reason why people look different is because of the SNPs. And while a majority of SNPs have minimal biological impact, some can have direct functional consequences, especially if they affect protein synthesis. And they can also be a direct marker of disease, especially if they are in proximity with a disease-causing organism. Now, for blood pressure, a lot of SNPs have been described. And they have been described because they cause occurrence of blood pressure, but they have also been described because they affect the way we respond to treatment. A lot of these SNPs have been described in the Western world and East Asian populations, and so they are myriad. You don't have to read all of them, but just to let you know that there are almost 500 that have been described for different phenotypes of blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, fast pressure. Some of them intersect in the causation of these blood pressure phenotypes. However, all of these have been described in populations that are not like ours. Our populations have only contributed 3% of this description. And yet we have a higher prevalence of hypertension, and we have considerable differences in our allele frequencies. And the SNPs that they have described in the Europeans probably don't confer the same risk as they do in ours. So it's important that we study what happens in our population. So what's the problem? Now, we said that hypertension is a significant cause of mortality, and that the control of hypertension is hampered by lack of awareness, deficiency in diagnosis, and treatment. And that leads to significant cardiovascular morbidity and mortality. Now, 70% of all the people living with HIV are in Africa. And And this HIV has been associated with increased cardiovascular risk. However, whereas HIV has been shown to increase cardiovascular risk, and some populations we've seen that HIV increases the risk of hypertension. There are studies, especially in Africa, that have shown that either the risk is less or the risk is similar. So we are not exactly sure about that particular link. And although genetics in hypertension has been well described in publications, Africa has certainly contributed to this description in spite of the highest level of prevalence of hypertension. Now, there is insufficient data on awareness, diagnosis and control of hypertension in brief, and the role of HIV and genetics of hypertension in Africa is not well elucidated. By way of justification, we hoped that this project will provide knowledge of the levels of awareness and treatment of high blood pressure to inform control strategies and to reduce complications of cardiovascular morbidity and mortality like stroke, heart attacks, kidney failure. And also, we know that if we describe the association of HIV and hypertension, we could lend some information for strategies to prevent cardiovascular disease in HIV populations, but also to develop integrated HIV and hypertension care models. And thirdly, if we elucidate the role of genetics in hypertension, would not only offer knowledge on this, but also would help to better describe risk detection and disease prevention in high-risk groups. Our general objective was to describe the epidemiology of hypertension in sub-Saharan Africa, and also to describe the influence of selected non-traditional risk factors on blood pressure traits in the Ugandan population. Specifically, we wanted to assess the level of awareness, treatment and control of hypertension in Africa, to describe the determinants and levels of awareness, treatment and control of hypertension in a peri-urban district in central Uganda, and to evaluate the association of HIV status with hypertension in that same population, and also to determine the association of selected blood pressure related genetic variants on blood pressure traits in the Ugandan population. And this is where we conceptualize our work. Now we know that for you to get a raised blood pressure, there have to be some factors in play. One of them is genetics, but then you have other comorbidities, and also you have some social factors. Whether you have whether you're highly educated or not, whether you come from a high or low socioeconomic status, what your country of avoiding, and whether you live in an urbanized environment. So that would increase your risk of high blood pressure. However, if you are aware of your hypertension status, and if you're treated for hypertension, and if the public health policy can allow you to access care or diagnose you, you're likely to control your blood pressure, and therefore reduce the risk of stroke, ischemic heart disease, and kidney failure, and therefore also reduce your risk of death or disability due to hypertension. Now, our study looked at the way non-social factors and behavioral factors contribute to awareness of hypertension status is treatment and control. That was our objective 1 and 2. Now, for objective 3, we looked at the yet not well-defined problem of HIV infection and the risk in causing high blood pressure. And for objective 4, we looked at genetics and how it could explain raised blood pressure in our population. And these were the summary of our methods. For objective 1, we used a systematic review and meta-analysis to describe the level of awareness, treatment, and control of hypertension in Africa. And objective 2 was listed in a bigger MEPI CVD project that set out to describe cardiovascular disease in a population in a peri-urban area in Uganda. Now, we nested our study in that bigger study, and we objective 2, 3, and 4 were listed there, and determinants levels awareness and control by hypertension in Uganda was described by a cross-sectional study, as was the Association of HIV status and hypertension in Uganda, and the Association of Selected Blood Pressure Slips with Hypertension. Our objective 1, achieved through doing a schematic review and meta-analysis, was levels of awareness, treatment, and control of hypertension in Africa, and we published the results in BMC cardiovascular disorders. And this is a summary. I need some help. And this is the summary. I need some help. Keep going. Keep going.
The what?
And this is a summary of the reasons. We searched PubMed, Medline, and we had a country search. And our search terms in that meta-analysis were Africa, hypertension, treatment, awareness, and control. And we also got good text articles from Google Scholar, PubMed, and Inari. And those good articles that we had looked at these bibliographies, and we got actually more articles. And we excluded articles that had other hypertension phenotypes, hypertension pregnancy, articles that had just one PP reading, and other review articles. We included peer-reviewed journals. We included peer-reviewed journals published over a 20-year span, 1993-2013, and we included cross-sectional based studies. And those that describe awareness, treatment, and control as per our operational definitions. And we analyzed our work using the random effect meta-analysis to estimate the good prevalence of hypertension and its awareness and treatment. And we used the fixed effect meta-analysis to compare these variables among different regions. And these were the reasons. Our primary search got us 41 articles, and the country-specific search and the search from the bibliographies got us extra articles to give us a total of 108 articles. We excluded 63 articles for different reasons, as listed there, and we had 45 full-text articles that were carried on for analysis. And these studies had 121,000 participants, aged between 15 years and 99 years, and they were from 26 out of 54 African countries. Almost half of Africa was covered. Now, the pooled prevalence of hypertension for those studies was 33%. The prevalence of awareness of hypertension status was 30%. And the prevalence of treatment was 27%. However, only 16% were controlled to target. The treatment was highest in North Africa, 42%, and lowest in East Africa, 30%, and the control was highest in Southern Africa and lowest in West Africa. Now, this figure here shows us the comparison of prevalence, awareness, treatment, and control across the regions of Africa. What's clear from this figure is that the North African region had the highest prevalence of hypertension, but they also had the best levels of diagnosis of hypertension and treatment. In spite of all that, the control of blood pressure was poor across all the regions of Africa. Now, what were our key findings from this meta-analysis? We found that one, poor control of hypertension was widespread, and it was worst in West Africa. And while the prevalence of hypertension, awareness, treatment, and control varied, North Africa had the highest levels of awareness and treatment. And East Africa, our region, had the lowest treatment levels, and that informed bits of our next study. By way of discussion, it's likely that North Africa had higher levels of diagnosis and treatment because they do have a quite robust health insurance scheme that's unavailable in these other parts of Africa. We've seen that once health insurance schemes are introduced, those places in which they are introduced, they have the likelihood of increasing the diagnosis and treatment of high blood pressure. But despite that, the control is usually difficult to achieve. And it could be because even if you diagnose and treated people, they wouldn't adhere to the medication if you gave it to them. But also, we are not sure whether the medication that you give them, they are effective, because a different variation in efficacy has been shown in different regions of the world. That informed our objective 2, where we went on to determine the levels of awareness, treatment and control of hypertension in central Uganda, and we achieved this through a cross-sectional survey, and that was published in BMC Public Health. And briefly, this study, as I earlier alluded to, was nested in a bigger MEPI study, which went out to look at different cardiovascular risk factors that occur in the peri-urban Ugandan population. And this study, we used multi-stage stratified sampling to select households that would be sorry about that. I think I skipped that slide. This slide describes our study site, which was Wakiso district. Wakiso district in South, the capital of Kampala, is the most populous district in Uganda, and it's rapidly urbanizing. In 2002, our Wakiso district was thought, 8% of Wakiso district was thought to be urban, whereas in 2014, the urban population of Wakiso represents 31%. It has 19 sub-counties, and we stratified those as rural and urban depending on their characteristics. And as well, we noted that the populations of Wakiso district across the district at different levels of epidemiological transition. That means that their lifestyle are changing at different rates, which makes them prone to different diseases. The MEPI study used multi-stage stratified sampling, where we selected households that would be used as the sampling frame. And out of those households, we used random sampling to get the different households that would be put in the survey. The household was a sampling unit. Now, this is National Town Council, very highly and densely populated, and this is Sukuma sub-county. They are all along trunk roads that come into the city, but clearly the characteristics of Sukuma sub-county and Wakiso and National Town Council are pretty different. So we thought that this difference would actually help us capture the difference between rural and urban characteristics of our population. Now, these were our methods. The study population was adults aged 18 years and above in Wakiso district who met the eligibility criteria, and the inclusion criteria was participants 18 years and above with written informed consent, and those who are well enough to undergo the study procedure. And we excluded households that are vacant. We found some households to be vacant, and also if we went to this home 3 times and we didn't find the adult at home, and that happened quite a bit. We carried out the survey between August 2012 and May 2013, and we did that after mobilizing village health teams and engaging community so that they would allow us into their areas to carry out the study. We got written consent from all participants, and we administered a modified STEPS questionnaire Now this questionnaire was developed by the WHO, and the beauty about it is that you can modify it to capture other characteristics of interest. However, it also has characteristics that you can compare across populations. And level 1 captures the demographic data and medical history. Level 2 captures physical measurements, and level 3 captures blood collection for glucose and lipids. Now, specifically for my study, we added the blood pressure measurement that was done with the digital blood pressure monitor according to the European Society of Hypertension recommendations. We did HIV testing that we did according to the national guidelines, and we also drew blood for our genetic work. And that's yours truly engaged in the process of engaging the village health teams. Now, for this objective 2, all participants for the MEPI CVD study were actually considered. Our major outcome was hypertension, as described by the JNC7 criteria that was described in 2003. And our other outcome was awareness, treatment, and control as per the operational definitions. And we also described the risk factors associated with hypertension. And these were our results. We had a complete data set of 5,300 participants. They had complete data. And among those participants, 23.2% of them had hypertension. Whereas 4,063, which was 76.8%, had no hypertension. But what's important is that in that group, a lot of the participants in the group that had no hypertension actually had pre-hypertension. Now, pre-hypertension has been described to increase cardiovascular risk in different populations in the world. So this is a pre-cardiovascular disease condition. Now, hypertension, for those who had hypertension, a great number of them had stage 1 hypertension, and we had a great number of them with stage 2 hypertension as well. And these are the characteristics of our study population, and we characterize into rural and urban. And what we see from this population is that the urbanites had a less favorable obesity profile. BMI was much higher in the urban population. And also the lipid profiles, the non-HDL cholesterol was much higher in the urban population. However, the rural populations had much higher, especially systolic blood pressure. And this was the severity of hypertension by JNC criteria disaggregated into rural and urban. And from this, you see that hypertension was certainly a little higher in the rural environments. And, but the difference between the rural and hypertension and urban environments as regards to hypertension was significant. The rest was not significant. And as regards factors associated with hypertension, we know, we noted that age, just like elsewhere, was associated with increased hypertension. But in our population, if you are below 40 years of age and you jumped into the group that's above 40 years, your risk of having high blood pressure jumped 5 times. So the odds of having high blood pressure, hypertension, were 5 times among those aged 40 years and above compared to those aged 40 years and below. Also, we noted that we also noted that we had more obesity in the urban environments compared to the rural environments. Our key findings from this was the high prevalence of hypertension that was largely undiagnosed. So was a high prevalence of hypertension that was likely undiagnosed, as in the rest of Africa, and possibly it's because we have had missed opportunities and facilities for screening, and also because the nature of the disease is silent. We had poor control of hypertension despite high levels of treatment. It's possible that you had poor adherence to the treatment, and also, weak, very ineffective drugs, and probably genetics. And the majority of our non-hypertensive patients had pre-hypertension. That portends increased CVD risk and has been classified potentially as hypertension by the recent American College of Cardiology guidelines. And above 40 years, you are 4 times more likely, the participants are 4 times more likely to have hypertension. And we know that it's possible that in our environment, this is the highest risk group. Elsewhere, the hypertension increase with age has been quite graded. It hasn't been as drastic as found in our population. And for objective 3, where we evaluated the association of HIV status with hypertension in a population of central Uganda, we hypothesized that the proportion of HIV-positive participants with hypertension would be different from that of HIV-negative participants with hypertension. And we drew from the survey of participants, and we had a different consent form for them for HIV tests. And we disagreed with them into those who had HIV and those who did not have HIV, and we took their blood pressures. And these were our results. 1, from the 5,300 participants from the survey, 350 participants did not give us consent to do their HIV test. Therefore, we had 4,900 participants giving us consent to do the HIV test. Now, among those, 10.4% had HIV, and among those who had HIV, hypertension was prevalent in 14.9%. Now, those who did not have HIV, hypertension was prevalent in 24.7%, and that was different. So we analyzed this and to get the association of hypertension, HIV status with hypertension, and we adjusted for age, sex, alcohol intake, BMI, and non-HDL cholesterol. And what we got was that the HIV-positive participants were 60% less likely to have hypertension when we compared them to the HIV-negative participants. We looked at the risk factors of hypertension by HIV status to see if they were different. And we found a difference in the age and in the alcohol and the smoking status. The HIV participants were older and they took a little bit more alcohol. We also looked at the status of their treatment, and 24% of those who had HIV are actually being treated. We also looked at the clinical factors related to hypertension by HIV status, and we found that the blood pressures among the HIV negative positive participants were actually lower than those among the HIV negative participants. And the HIV positive participants had probably a more favorable lipid profile. So our findings from these were that the HIV positive participants were less likely to have hypertension compared to the HIV negative participants. Now, these findings do not agree with most studies done in high-income countries, where we've been told that if you have HIV, your risk of hypertension goes up. However, most studies in Africa actually agree with our findings. In studies done by Dillon and others, this was a meta-analysis. He showed that HIV patients in Africa had lower blood pressures than those HIV negative patients. So it's possible that the situation in Africa is different from the situation in the Western world, and it's possible that patients in Africa, Sika, May and others have described adrenal insufficiency and autonomic dysfunction in these patients with HIV. Now, even then, this low blood pressure may not be protective for HIV patients, as an increase in mortality has been documented if you had HIV and had a low blood pressure. Our fourth and final objective was to determine the association of selected blood pressure-related genetic variants. We looked at SNPs on blood pressure traits in the Ugandan population, and we published that in the Journal of Clinical Genetics. We hypothesized that there is a difference in blood pressure measurements among participants with selected SNPs compared to those without the SNPs in the Ugandan population. And how we did this is that we got samples from the survey, and we selected 2,400 samples, which we calculated would have adequate power to answer our study question. We did this by random sampling. We genotyped 30 SNPs in these samples, and the way we selected SNPs were those SNPs that were found in seminal studies in African ancestral populations, in Africa and in African Americans, and those SNPs that had transmethylinic effects on blood pressure. That means that you could actually genotype them in different environments, and also if these SNPs had biological plausibility in the causation of high blood pressure. Our outcome of interest was whether these SNPs changed different blood pressure phenotypes, diastolic blood pressure, systolic blood pressure, and pulse pressure. And we did our genotyping using the FLEX6 process, which was developed in Cleveland, Ohio. And we analyzed our genotype-phenotype association using the PLINK software. These were the baseline characteristics of the sample of the patients whose samples were picked from the major survey population. And we note that these characteristics were almost similar to the ones that we had in the major survey population. And these were the results of the genotyping. The survey population had 5,300 participants, and we picked 2,881 samples by random sampling. And among those samples, we genotyped 30 SNPs. Now, we excluded 3 SNPs and also excluded 214 samples because they did not meet our quality control criteria. And therefore, we genotyped 27 SNPs in 2,667 samples. And it is in this that we did a genotype, phenotype analysis. These are the results for that genotyping. And what you see here are the genes that are associated with the SNPs that we genotyped. These are the genes. So the SNPs will have numbers, but they will be close to these genes. So we can see that some genes were actually genotyped for more than one phenotype. The AGT, for example, was phenotyped for systolic blood pressure. For systolic blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, and hypertension. And the sub-1 NPR3 and was genotyped for pulse pressure and systolic blood pressure. This table here shows the effect of the SNP on the blood pressure. So what happens to people, to the blood pressure of those people who had this particular SNP? So this figure here shows the SNP, which is the RS means reference SNP. And this is the chromosome on which the SNP is found. And that's the gene that's related to the SNP. And that's the effect, the allele frequency, how frequent is the gene in this population. And that's the beta, the difference in blood pressure between those who had the SNP and those who do not have the SNP. Now, these were all significant SNPs, but the SNP that's closest to the sub-1 NPR3 gene caused a reduction in blood pressure among those who had the SNPs of close to 10 millimeters of mercury. And that also happened for pulse pressure. The other SNPs, the difference in blood pressure was about 2 millimeters of mercury. This picture probably shows it better, that if you have the effect size on the y-axis and the effective alpha frequency on the x-axis, that SNP, the sub-1 NPR3 gene, actually caused a reduction of up to 10 millimeters of mercury on those patients, on those participants who had it. So our key points therefore were that whereas we had 11 SNPs that were significantly associated with at least one blood pressure trait, the participants that had the SNP near the sub-1 NPR3 gene had significantly lower blood pressure and pulse pressure than those who do not have that SNP. Now, what this tells us is that some SNPs you can actually get them from other populations and be able to find them in our population. So we call that transethnic replication. The other is that the sub-1 NPR3 gene had this profound effect on both systolic blood pressure and pulse pressure. Now we know that the NPR3 gene encodes a protein, the arterionatriuretic peptide, that moderates the maintenance of blood pressure. But the effect of that has never been as profound as we found in our study population. At the beginning of this presentation, I told you that if a SNP has an allele frequency, or if it's found in less than 0.1% of the population, if it's found in less than 1% of the population, it's probably a mutation. So our question therefore is that if this a SNP, does it confer a mutation on blood pressure? So these were our general conclusions. That one, this was the whole study. That one, in Africa, the prevalence of hypertension, awareness, treatment, and control varies interregionally. The treatment levels are highest in Africa and lowest in South Africa. And that control is suboptimal regardless of where you live in Africa. And two is that in Uganda, there are low levels of diagnosis of hypertension. The control of hypertension was still low despite universal treatment. We had a substantial proportion of participants that have hypertension, a known cardiovascular risk factor that's also potentially modified. And participants with HIV infection were less likely to have hypertension compared to those without HIV. And the SNP RS7726475, which is a marker close to or within the sub-1 NPR3 gene, was associated with a significantly lower blood pressure, systolic blood pressure and pulse pressure in those who had it. So what were the strengths and limitations? Studies usually have strengths and they do have limitations. So we did the largest survey to date that described hypertension in Uganda and also described other cardiovascular risk factors. However, because it's a survey, the relationship described within there can't be causal relationships. They can only be associations. While we looked at the HIV populations, we didn't collect data on antiretroviral therapy regimes and immunological and virological status. Now, these regimes usually have an effect on blood pressure, but because this was a community survey and the cost implications, we didn't collect these genes. But we also know that it's better to study hypertension in longitudinal studies rather than as cross-sectional studies. So that was a limitation. We described relatively low sample sizes. We described the SNPs in relatively low sample sizes. Now, even if our genetic work had the power to describe our associations, 2,600 samples are not enough to reveal all the associations. And so what we've done is that we've worked with other groups elsewhere in the world to do a meta-analysis among our populations and their populations to better describe these genetic variants. So we've published that in PLOS Genetics. And some of the SNPs that we describe in our populations actually are described in other populations. So what's our recommendations that are derived from this particular study? One, that hypertension awareness treatment and control differs in different environments, and therefore control policies may differ. And so we have to look at both the distribution of the risk factors and tailor control policies to these risk factors. It's important that in our population especially, we consider hypertension screening and treatment for all individuals that are above 40 years of age. As well, because pre-hypertension, which is a pre-CVD, a pre-cardiovascular disease condition, was quite prevalent in our environment, we need to advise non-pharmacological interventions for all adults. And we need to adopt or adopt guidelines to capture context-specific pharmacological interventions for treatment of hypertension. And for our researchers, we recommend that they define specific problems affecting implementation of evidence of blood pressure control and interventions for overcoming the challenges. We do that through implementation science techniques. And we also advise that longitudinal research is done in HIV and hypertension in Africa to further clarify that a lot of the studies that have been done in Africa have been either cross-sectional studies or retrospective studies. Now, that usually doesn't bring out this link well. Most of the studies done in the Western world have actually been longitudinal studies. They have followed up patients over years to describe the link. Maybe that's what we need to do if we are really to get the actual link of HIV and hypertension. And then we need to explore the RS772-6374 gene and its effects on hypertension. Now, when we go into detail, this gene was found in about 30 individuals in our population. So if these individuals are actually related, we are talking about a mutation that confers very low blood pressure. Of course, it's difficult to know if this blood pressure, if this condition is beneficial or deleterious, but it's important that we describe one for these people and try to see what among them is causing this issue. Thank you very much for being very attentive. I'd like to thank my supervisors, the doctoral committee, and this work was funded by that grant, the grant of the MEPI CVD award, and I was helped a lot by the MEPI CVD survey team and administration to get this data. I'd like to thank as well my peer mentors, the MEPI MESAU PhD Forum, my family of course, and friends for making this possible. Thank you very much.